This conference will now be recorded.
I take that as a yes, right? All right. Well, then listen, I really enjoyed the opportunity to see you all last year and was really, really excited to be able to come back virtually this year, of course. But it was interesting. Last year, shortly after I spoke at your event, I had an incident that really kind of freaked me out a little bit. So to put it in context, last year, I was really on this movement to try to scale my business, to try to get bigger and bigger. And to do that, I was going to be probably going to more conferences, but doing less training. And so one of my clients, they're out in California, they wanted me to come out and do it was an annual program, it was a 3-day session. And I convinced them to use a trainer that worked with me. And she was really, really good. And so she lives here in the Nashville area near where I live. And so I went ahead and got it all lined up. The client was not super excited, but I figured that Tracy would win her over. So anyway, the plan was Tracy was going to fly up to Washington State, see her daughter and granddaughter, and then fly down to Ontario, California. Well, she flew out on Saturday. The workshop was going to start Monday morning. And so on Saturday, she called me and her voice was a little raspy. And I said, "Are you okay?" She says, "Yeah, I feel like I got some kind of allergy thing going on." I says, "Are you going to be okay to do the session on Monday?" She says, "I think so." So now I'm starting to get a little bit nervous. Well, on Sunday, she called me and now she had flown into Ontario and she says, "I am not feeling good and I'm really concerned. I called my doctor. He prescribed a Z-Pack for me. I went and picked it up at the pharmacy, but I hope I'm going to be okay." And I asked her, I said, "Tracy, you've got to let me know. If you can't do this, I got to fly myself out there to California." She says, "I think I'll be okay." Well, then that evening, I'm starting to get pretty worked up now. She texted me. She says, "I'm not getting any better, but hopefully I'll be okay in the morning." So now it's about 11 o'clock at night. I'm getting ready to go to bed. And I thought I just better check in one more time and text her. Of course, it's 2 hours time difference. And right away, she says, "I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I'm going to try my best. I can hardly talk." I said, "Tracy, you've got to let me know." She says, "I think I'll be okay." So probably 2 in the morning, I wake up. I can't fall back to sleep. I go out to the living room, get my phone, text Tracy. "Tracy, are you okay?" She says, "I don't know. I'm going to do my best." So now I'm starting to weigh my options. I'm thinking, okay, if I can actually get a flight to get out to Ontario, it's going to be getting me there. Earliest is 9:30. Now the workshop starts at 9, so I can hold them off for probably 30 minutes. But I got to fly myself from Nashville, which means I got to drive in. It's an hour and a half to get to the airport, get through security, and hope I can make it. And my window of time is closing. And so I made one last call to Tracy. I said, "Tracy, if I'm going to do this, I need to know right now, can you make it?" And of course, I didn't want to do it because I'd have to pay her. I would use all my profits up flying myself out there. It was a complete mess. And I was so nervous trying to figure out what to do. And it was that ambiguity that I think really stood out to me 1 year ago. And we had no idea that COVID was going to be around, but lo and behold, for all of us, our lives have changed. And so I thought what I would do this morning in the very short time that I have with each of you is talk to you about leading in times of ambiguity. Now, my little session and my issue I had with the client pales in comparison to what most of us are dealing with right now. So for many of you, you are working virtually. You could have never figured that was going to happen. Of course, the state conference was canceled. The national was canceled. Thank God we're having one here. This is really good. But there's a lot of unknowns. And I thought, each of you have been always wanting that seat at the table. And now I bet some of you are being dragged to that table. And in some cases, you're being dragged to that table. And let's be honest, you may not know what to do because there's a lot of uncertainty that's going on. So what I want to do in our short time together is give you some tools to be able to handle that ambiguity. So we're going to spend some time and brief time talking about current reality because we're at the halfway point of the year. I have no indication that anything's going to be different in the second half of the year than it was in the first. So we've got to figure out what the current reality is. I'm going to give you 3 key definitions because once you understand what you're working with, you'll have a better plan to get out of it. We're going to do a really brief 5-question quiz on your ambiguity style. And you'll be identified based on how you answer the questions as one particular animal as it deals with ambiguity. And then we're going to talk about decisions. Now, I don't have enough time to give you a lot of tools, so I'm going to give you just one tool. I usually do this talk in about an hour. We got a bunch of tools. We'll just get one, and then we'll end with how will I be remembered? How will I be remembered? So why don't we jump right into it? If you were able to download the handout, that would be awesome. If you were not able to and you want the filled out version of the handout, then when we're done, I'll go ahead and I'll see if maybe Shelly can send it out to each of you so you have it. This is not going to be anything groundbreaking, but it's important when I start talking about some of the things that we are all struggling with. You know, some of these you'll say, well, I don't have a problem with that. I've got that covered, and that's fine. But consider that there's people that are working for you right now that maybe don't have it all together. And so we've got to be able to have some empathy when it comes to dealing with people that are part of our circle, whether it's professional or personal. So the biggest thing, of course, this year, and you know, it's funny to think back in, I guess it was January, maybe January 2nd of 2020, the biggest thing that we thought we'd worry about is when we write a check, do you write 2020 or do you just write 20? Because people were worried that, you know, people would try to steal identity or whatever. Who could have predicted that COVID would be such a big part of our life? And I did a blog post a couple weeks ago about words that I hate, which is COVID, coronavirus, pivot, virtual. All these things have happened now and have really changed the way we do business. And for some of you, you know, you're not only dealing with the work uncertainty, but you're dealing with uncertainty at home too. Some of you have young children, and so you are balancing your day with young children and trying to get your work done and stay relevant. Some of us, and I'll put myself in this category, I have adult children, but I have parents that act like children. So now we're trying to balance, trying to keep my in-laws from going out shopping, and they're worse than children because with older people, we've got other issues. We're worried about them. So there's another challenge that we have. For some people, you know, you think about last year, if you were a high school senior last year, you did not get a prom. And so I always visualize like 20 some years from now, there is going to be a graduate of the class of 2020 whose daughter is upset because she doesn't have a date for the prom. And what do you think mom's going to say? Are you kidding me? I didn't even have a prom back in 2020. So there's going to be all this. There's going to be so many funny things going on. But you have to think about this too. We're getting a lot of misinformation. People look to you for answers and you may not even have them. And for some of you, staffing is different. There's a lot of things to worry about. And people are going to bring that stuff with them to the office. And as part of the team at the table, it's going to be up to you to be able to figure out strategies to get around it. So I left room in there because it's important that you identify your own current reality because that's where you're coming from. Now let's clarify some definitions because I only got 21 minutes left to go. So if you have this page, there's the 3 definitions that we need to talk about. So the first one is what we really wanted to title this whole session was ambiguity, all right? And so ambiguity, I have a definition there for you. It's more than one interpretation, or there's inexactness. There are some of us that have to have all the answers all the time because we want to be in control of things. And right now we don't have it. So this is sort of the culture that we're wrestling with right now. And it's based on this next one right here, which you know as fear. So we've got a couple definitions here for fear. And I think the one that I like the most is dread, right? It's kind of like some of you dread Monday morning, right? It's just something that when you think about it, your skin starts to crawl. But the key thing is that that's an emotion that we're experiencing. For some of us, it's a lack of courage. We just don't even have it anymore. We don't have the energy to step up. And for some of us, we have to be there, but we have intense reluctance. So right now, people are dealing with ambiguity. There's more than one answer. There's no absolutes. And then there's fear of consequence. Well, that fear has another driver that most of us are experiencing on a regular basis. And it's this thing called anxiety. Anxiety. So now there's actual medical conditions where you have anxiety and you got to take medications for that. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about just this fear of the fear. So for example, if you have a fear of flying, it's probably because you have a fear of crashing, right? So as soon as you book a trip on an airplane, immediately this starts kicking in, doesn't it? And the closer you get to taking off, the more that this happens. And so the signs of anxiety are just people having a total meltdown, people going quiet, people going silent. And the challenge for each of us is that these three put together are the backbone of what we're experiencing at work right now. And you think you escape it coming home, all you got to do is turn that news on, and it doesn't matter what channel you watch, you're going to get a different opinion. You will have less answers. And now you got to figure out what to do. Now, if you consider yourself to be a leader, and I would guess that each of you on this sketch and seminar think that, well, then it's going to be up to you to take charge of this stuff right here. And to do that, we have to get a better sense of where you are when it comes to handling ambiguity. So what I'd like you to do now, we're going to do this quick quiz. And so if you have this sheet, the first thing I'd like you to do is to number down 1 through 5, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then you want to draw some lines here because you're going to put a letter in there based on how you're going to answer the quiz question, all right? So we're only going to give you a few seconds, so don't overthink this. I want your first reaction when I go through these 5 quiz questions, all right? So the question number 1 is a multiple choice. I'm going to read it. I want you to hear the 3 options, and then I want you to pick the one that sounds most like you. So here's question number 1. When I'm faced with an ambiguous situation, I would prefer to A, hide under the covers, B, find out what I do know and work from that, or C, take full and immediate control of things. So I want you to think about where you are when it comes to ambiguity. Which of those 3 sounds most like you? And then when you have it, you're going to write that letter on the line right there. So for me, I would probably say I'm probably B. So that's my answer. All right, question number 2 now. When in doubt, I, A, try to find out more data, B, go with what I know, or C, I trust my gut and get it done. So which of those 3 sound most like you when you are facing ambiguity? For me, I usually go with what I know. So I'll give myself a B there. Be curious to see what you give. All right, here's question number 3. Listen carefully. This is a tricky one. I would rather be A, liked rather than right. B, I would rather be right and liked. C, I would rather be right instead of being liked. I know that's tricky, so I'm going to say them again. I would rather be A, liked rather than right, B, liked and right, or C, right rather than liked. Find the one that sounds most like you and go ahead and put it down. With me, I think I'd probably put A for myself there. All right, question number 4, moving right along. When facing a figurative brick wall, A, I contemplate a way around it, B, I climb up on top to get a better perspective, or C, I prefer to crash through it. So which of those 3 sound most like you when you're facing the brick wall? For me, I probably would give myself B. I'll be curious what you do. All right, last question. Kind of tricky again, so listen carefully. I thrive best in situations where A, all the unknowns are known to me, B, I know most of the unknowns and even some of the unknown unknowns, or C, I move forward and learn as I go. So think about which one sounds most like you. Give yourself a letter. I'll give myself C on that one. And now that you have, go ahead and total these up. We want to give it point values, all right? So every A is worth 1, every B is worth 5, every C is worth 10. So let's go ahead and get a total score up here, and then we're going to add those numbers together. So what do I have? 1, 2, 3. So I have 15. And then let's see, what do we got? A, that's worth 1. And I got 1C that's worth 10. So look at that. I have 26. So what I do is I got to find on the bottom scale here, 26 for me, which is right here. That puts me in the category of the rhino. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and score and identify where you are on this ambiguity scale right here. Okay. So I'll just be curious. Let's see if I can pull up the chat thing. And I don't know if you can chat, but would you do me a favor and just type in what you came up with? What's your animal score? We have owl, we have golden retriever, and we have rhino. Okay, everybody's giving me number. Ah, there we go. We got a rhino. Okay, good. All right, so let me very briefly talk to you about what these three animals typically do. And again, a 5-question quiz is not going to be absolute, but this might give you just a little idea. All right, so when it comes to ambiguity, the rhinos tend to be low in emotion, but high in assertiveness. So when there's unknowns, they basically crash through, destroy everything, trying to figure out what the truth is. So they're not afraid of ambiguity. If anything, this is what gets them excited. There's unknowns, they're going to race forward, they'll crash through, and they'll sort it out when they get through. So that's our first way of dealing with it. Second way of dealing with it is the golden retriever. So with golden retriever, you kind of have low assertiveness, but high emotion. So in ambiguity, what you might find from this particular style is that you understand there's a lot of unknowns, but you have a great deal of empathy for the people who are struggling right now. And so you will get moving forward in this time of ambiguity, but you're going to want to make sure that everybody is okay. That's where we get that idea that I would rather be liked instead of right. That kind of fits with the golden retriever. So rhino's going to be head first going into it, not caring who's following. Here, we're going to try to all get it done together. And then we have our last one here, which is the owl. Low assertiveness and also low in emotion. So the golden retriever leads with a lot of emotion. This one leads with a lot of adrenaline. This one is very, I was going to say, how do you say, contemplative? So you think about stuff, right? So there's no unknowns. The owl is going to be processing information, trying to make unknowns known to get as much data before they make any decision. So this would be the one at the meeting that says, well, why don't we table this discussion until next month, right? That's the one that tables it. Here we want to make sure everybody's doing well. Here it's like, well, piss on the meeting. Let's just get something done, right? Now you can see if this is a representation of your office right now, your organization, there's a lot of chaos. And the question is, what should you be doing right now? If you're a rhino, are you in the best place? Well, there's no clear answer to that because there's no clear delineation of what the right amount of ambiguity is. It's just where you are right now. But here's what I will tell you. If you go rhino all the time and make enough mistakes, people aren't going to trust you anymore. And if you are going golden retriever all the time, making sure everybody's happy and doing well, not a whole lot's going to get done, but we might feel better about it. Your value won't be as great there. And if all you're going to do is sit and think about it and hope ever somebody else takes the lead, you might be unknown. And so my recommendation is you have to be able to work to be a blend of these three, don't you? You got to be able to turn each of these on and be authentic. And right now, this is going to be key. And you know, on top of that, then we have to deal with either a lack of information or we're dealing with information overload. And I think we're probably experiencing both. And so with just 11 minutes remaining in my talk, I'm going to take you to just one of the tools that I have, and I have a lot more. So here's the offer. I'll make this at the end too, but if you would like to have this presentation for like all your managers or maybe your executive team with all the tools, it's an hour long, I'm happy to do that. And if you want that, here's how you do it. You text the word boss to 44144. Now I know right now you all have your phones sitting right there because some of you are scrolling on them because this is so boring. So why don't you go ahead and text boss to 44144, and there's a couple autoresponder things, but we'll get you on the schedule. I'll do it live, and we'll even do it with the drawing like this too. I just think that the more tools you can have, the better. But let's just go with one, and this one's actually fairly new. I was thinking about this one, I guess it was last week when I was doing one of the drawing courses that you're seeing me do right now. And so 4-quadrant models are kind of cool because what you can do with them is you can sort of divide and conquer and sort. So let's go through and let's label these boxes, all right? So across the top, we're dealing with knowns and unknowns, okay? So I'm going to label it. So, oh, this is known. Got to do that right. Known. And this is unknown. Okay, what we're doing is we're dealing with situations and data. Now across this way, we have invisible, and then we have visible, which means now we have 4 quadrants. Now, we'll get a little creative here. Don't laugh at my brains and eyes here because I'm not really all that good, but bear with me. So in each of these, we're going to have things that we know and things that we see, or things that we don't know and maybe things that we don't see. So this is actually a brain. See, look at the little things. You ever realize that your brain looks like a piece of chewed up gum? Kind of how you have to draw it. So in each of these quadrants now, we're dealing with data, and now it's going to be up to us for interpretation. Hopefully you can draw this along with me, huh? There we go. The brain right here. Kind of a big brain. This would be probably like mine, huh? There we go. And one more. And then this is going to make sense to you. And one more eye. Look at that. All right. And I did hear, maybe you did too, that one of the hottest selling items are fake eyelashes. So we better add those on. All right. So this is what this means. Let's get serious now. We are going to be faced with enormous amount of data, and my recommendation is sort that stuff out. Sort it out, because if you don't, it's going to be like the big wad of Christmas lights that you have to untangle every year. So we start with what we know and what we can see. And this is where we're most comfortable operating from, isn't it? Unfortunately, this one is probably going to be the smallest of all the conditions right now, which leads to anxiety. And because we want you to be a leader in anxiety, your job is to put as much of that data into this box right here, because that's the best one right there. But then we have this second box right here. So this one here, so this is I see and I understand. We'll quote that. I see, whoops, and I understand. All right, here's the second box right here. Now this one is where I can see something, but I don't really know what it means. This is actually a really good box to have too, because what it means is that you're being observant, right? Nothing is going to throw you, but you may not understand everything that you're seeing. So this is how we label it. I see, but I don't understand. This is where if you have a really good team of people around you, they may actually look at that and say, yeah, I know exactly what that means. It's something that I understand. In fact, this is where you might find your owls really starting to step up. So that's your second condition right there. Third condition is right down here. Now, these are things that we know, but we don't have any evidence of it, right? So it's invisible. We can't see it. We just know it's there. This is sometimes where your gut comes in, right? I have a gut feeling about something. This gets more reliable the more experience that you get. But sadly for us, we've got no visible evidence of it. Your credibility when things were not catastrophic and ambiguous is probably going to go a long way to how people are treating what you come up with now. Because for some people, they didn't prove worthy even when we didn't have a crisis. So they're going to be fighting an uphill battle now for relevance and significance. But if you've always been a good player, a good, strong person that understands the bigger picture, this is going to be a time where you probably really shine. So again, now if you can know things but have no visible evidence, then my recommendation is that you start assembling a team of people who can take a look at what you know but can't see and see if they can actually get it to where it is visible, where it can be clarified. And again, you know who your best people are in this? Those owls, because they're really good at thinking about stuff. Which leads us to our last block right here. Now this one contains things that we don't know and things that we don't see. And that's this one right here. So there's too much unknown. And for some of you right now, what you're saying is this sounds like my life right now. This is the condition. and you're doing what a lot of people are saying, and that is, I got nothing. I got nothing. Okay, but I don't want you to leave with that, because by doing some diligent work, by pushing hard and eliminating unknowns, by involving your team, what you're going to be able to do is take that additional information then and start fitting it into that yellow box there. That's where we want everybody to be, right? We want to be to the point where everybody can have the access to the data and we understand it. In fact, if you really think about it right now, what is making COVID-19 so stressful is the fact that pretty much everything that we see kind of fits into this box right here. And that's where I need each of you to start thinking about stepping up hard. So with about 3 minutes to go, let's kind of talk about what happens when this ends. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. Well, I do, but it's about the color of a bowling ball. I don't really got much coming out of it. But, you know, everything that, for whatever it's worth, my opinion is that maybe by this time next year, a lot of this will have gone away. I might still be alive. We don't really know, right? That's why this ambiguity thing is so challenging for us. But let's just pretend that next summer this is gone. And what's going to be left is an economy that's really going to be in the tank. There's going to be a lot of stress. There's going to be things that we probably couldn't have never pictured. I mean, you could almost think about it as like the aftermath of a disaster. I don't know what it's going to look like. I just know it's going to be very different. And then when that happens, how are you going to be remembered? Okay, and so we've got really 3 opportunities for being remembered here. Now, in 2001, I was working at a hospital in Silver Spring, Maryland. I was the management education specialist. And of course, on the morning of September 11th, you know, we all say, where were we? Well, we were getting ready to have a JCO inspection at the hospital. So in the HR department where I was working, we were going through employee records, and somebody said, hey, I heard a plane crash into one of the Twin Towers. Well, immediately I just thought it was a little airplane, right? One of those little single engine things with a propeller on it. So I didn't think much of it. And then, of course, as the morning went on, things started to get real. And then, of course, when the plane hit the Pentagon, now it was absolutely real, because where Holy Cross Hospital sits in Silver Spring, it's only about maybe 35, 40 miles as the crow flies. So the CEO gathered everybody into the big cafeteria. And he says, you know, he gave us what he knew, which not much. I mean, total ambiguity. We didn't know when the next shoe was going to drop. But he says we can be expecting to take on a lot of casualties from the Pentagon. So I'm looking around the room, and there was people, I tell you, I had the most respect for, who were having an absolute meltdown. They were in tears, they were incoherent. And then I looked at other people and I thought, you know, that person, I never saw them as anybody that was significant. They were just kind of laying low. They're the ones now that are starting to get people together and mobilized. And in most cases, and I kind of expected this, most of those people were prior military, right? Because that's what we're trained to do, is to deal with chaos and crisis and ambiguity. But I never forgot that. There was people who, my opinion, have changed that day both ways, positive and negative. And you know, when COVID ends, I believe that same thing is going to be happening. There is going to be some people who are going to go down in history as notorious. In other words, they sucked when it came to dealing with leadership in COVID. There's going to be some people, and they'd be people you probably didn't expect. Whatever the case, do not let any of you be in this group right here. And the second group is right here in the middle. And basically, they're unremarkable. They're unremarkable. They came through okay, but we don't have anything we remember. When we think about how they handled COVID, it's like, oh, they showed up. I really didn't see anything significant. But then there's this last one right here. And I'm just going to say it just so it kind of rhymes with notorious. We're going to call this victorious. Victorious. In other words, situation came that nobody could have predicted, and you stood up. And I'm going to tell you, that's the timer, by the way. I have worked still, even it's virtual with clients, I have seen more executives than not do this stuff very poorly, which means each of you, I believe, have opportunities to take up and be that leader that everybody expects. So again, folks, I wish I had more time to give you some more tools. This is some contact info. It's on the back of your handout if you printed it. If you want the filled out ones, I guess Shelly can somehow get those to you. I can send those to her. But this is just some info. And again, I really want to encourage you to take me up on this offer, right? I did it last year. I says a seminar on how to be a great boss. I had several people. I ended up going back to the Tidewater area. It was one of my last trips before this happened to do some lunch and learns. But same drill. You want it, just text the word boss to 44144. I would love to do that for you. I'll customize it to your group. No cost, no obligation. No salespeople will call you. So with that, I am done. I guess I'll give it back to Shelly and she'll give it back to Sahara and we'll be in business. Oh, and Jennifer asked, did you fly to California? Okay, no, I didn't. And as it happened, by noon that day, Tracy was feeling better and she ended up doing a great job. But I still get nervous whenever I ask somebody to do a training session for me. So after that, I'm doing them all myself. So if you want to work with us, sadly enough, you're going to get me. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your conference, folks. Thank you so much for having me in the lineup today.
Hey, thanks very much, Mac. That was wonderful. Really appreciate all the information, the insight, and some of the tips that we can, I'm sure, all use here with our employees. I didn't pick up on any other questions in the chat unless I missed any. So if you have any questions, here's your last, couple moments to put them in the chat there. All right, great. Looks like a lot of appreciation. Mac, that was wonderful. Oh, we got one question here.
I appreciate that.
We had one question squeeze in just at the very end. Shelly, you can go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to remind everybody that you guys are going to get this video as well as Mac's going to get your email addresses. And so Mac, you're going to be able to correspond with everybody with your offer reminder as well as any of the final information that you gave today. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
So let's go ahead and transition just to stay on schedule here, transition to our next sponsor. So I'd like to now go ahead and introduce a representative from Optima to, from Steve with Optima to go ahead and take it away. Steve, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Go ahead and take it away.
Excellent. Thanks very much. I'm Steve Keogh, the Senior Sales Executive in the large group market for Optima Health, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys again this year. And it's great to see that we're making the most of the methods that we have to be together in this tough environment. And great presentation from Mac. Appreciate that very much as well. And I'll say that Optima is definitely charging ahead, I think, in a leadership mode in general through this entire situation and trying our best to minimize the ambiguity in terms of our direction and also in terms of what we're delivering to our clients. As you guys know, really quickly, I'm just going to make a number of high-level comments in my short window. Optima is the regional health insurer operation business unit of Sentara Healthcare, and we are definitely moving in an innovative way towards delivering a real combination of quality and affordability in the health insurance market. Clearly, affordability is of utmost importance to everybody out there at the group and the individual member level, and everything we do is around bringing new ways to deliver that combination. And we do it on the foundation of an excellent customer service model, a real partnership with our clients who pretty much invariably find us to be a pleasure to work with. So if you could flip to the next slide, that'd be great. I don't think I'm doing that myself. I want to just give you a little bit of the backdrop of where we stand these days. We're very much in a growth mode. We have significant goals in terms of increasing our membership for a number of reasons, and we're making very significant investments through multiple aspects of our organization to both enable that growth and manage it very effectively as we go forward. So we brought on some very significant senior leadership talent. We built out our human resources base throughout the operation, and we're making very large dollar investments in technology that again will help us bring about the growth and manage it effectively and drive a very customer-centric experience for all of our clients, new and current. We've had some really big developments in the last couple of years. Last year, when I spoke to you all, I was extremely pleased to be announcing that we had recently completed a partnership with Riverside Health System, which has done, obviously incredible things in terms of completing our access profile on the peninsula. Specifically, of most recent interest was we've completed a partnership deal with VCU Health System to take an 80% ownership in Virginia Premier, which is VCU's, previously VCU's and now really Centera's similarly positioned community-based managed care program focused on Medicaid. That has added significant membership, close to 300,000 members to our foundation, which drives a lot of scale and will enable us to leverage a much bigger profile in a number of ways, and then deliver on those investments that I spoke to earlier in a most cost-effective way. So we're thrilled to have that combination in play. And between additional scale and the results of those solution investments, plus the access that we've enhanced on the peninsula, I think we're finding that now that we have built out a full network in that area, folks, in terms of both clients and members, really like working with Optima Health, both the solutions themselves as well as the customer experience, and we're seeing tremendous success in the sales realm based on all that. Just in the last year, we've come to new arrangements, partnerships with the City of Newport News and Newport News Public Schools, Tidewater Physicians Multi-Specialty Group, New Horizons, Regional Ed Centers, and then a number of additional both public sector and private sector partnerships. And just within the last couple of weeks, we've added another one which didn't even make the slide. The City of Suffolk is coming aboard with Optima Health. So when we have a full-fledged solution to offer, which we do now in terms of the network access on the peninsula, based on adding Riverside, we're having a lot of success. So I very much encourage all of you to either continue to work with us, and I know there are a good number of current clients out there, and if you're not already with us, think strongly about considering Optima Health in the future, because we got a total package to offer to you. I'll wrap up there. I once again appreciate the opportunity to continue to partner with the Peninsula SHRM, and look forward to speaking with you guys in person sometime in the near future. Thanks much.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Steve. That was great. And I can share, my experience with Optima over the years has been wonderful, either through insurance, through EAP, whatever it may have been. So it's a great resource to have. Shelley, would you like to go ahead and introduce our next speaker for today?
Absolutely. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Sharon Washington. There are so many things that I could say about Sharon. She is quite the accomplished human being. She's got her master's in marketing communication, affectionately known as Marcom. She has done many things from authorship to teaching, consulting, and so much more. Her wisdom is definitely has spread over 2 decades, probably even more than that. She's deemed as the marketing whisperer. If you haven't seen that before, it's definitely true to her. She's got this uncanny ability to really assist businesses in developing an innovative, solution-driven, fusion of communication, which she's going to definitely drop on us today, marketing efforts that really increase growth and opportunities in businesses. She's sought after international speaker, a trainer, a facilitator, a professor, and again, so much more. Her energy is unbelievable. She's energetic, she's passionate. It definitely permeates with literally everything she does, every social media posting she does. Again, if you're not following her, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you follow her. So she's written a ton of books. You can see her bio in there as well. But without further ado, I really am honored and pleased to introduce Sharon Washington. Sharon, take it away.
Thank you, Shelley, for that. Every time I hear kind of the formal introduction, I'm always like, who is that? And who's doing that? So thank you. And I'm truly honored to be here. Thanks for Sharon for having me out. I'm excited about today. Not only am I a marketer, but I am a communications professor, and I've been teaching at Trinity for about 14 years. And one of my favorite subjects to actually talk about is intercultural communication. That's my favorite class because we discover so many things about ourselves when we talk about our communication. And I don't care like how old or young you are. I'm near 50. And I just learned so many things about myself that it's exciting to teach, and it's exciting to watch students grow within a 16-week period. So that brings me to today's subject about communication. And I am one that my definition of communication. So we have very technical definitions of communication. But for me, effective communication is only, I don't care if it's face-to-face, if it is through text, whatever it is, if it's through, silence, because silence communicates something too. No matter what it is, if you are providing your intentional meaning when you communicate, then you are effectively communicating. So if they get your meaning as intended, you are actually effectively communicating. But what happens is our biases can sometimes get in the way of that because we kind of think in a funnel. So I'm going to definitely today kind of open you up, unmask some of those challenges that you may or may not have, or expose some of those things that you don't really do when we talk about communicating, especially as adults, especially in the HR field. Oh, thank you everybody for saying welcome. I love it, love it, love it, welcome. I'm going to challenge what you think, what you have thought about yourself, and then what you're thinking about the world. Because the world right now, we're going through something, right? We're under several different pandemics, as some would refer to it too. We're going through challenges and everyday challenges, everyday life. Our lives are being affected. We're going through different changes. So I hope this will help you out. My hopes is that this will help you assess how you're communicating, have you walk away with some really concrete tactics and techniques to make sure that you're communicating effectively in such a sensitive environment. Okay. It's just getting stuck here. Sorry about that. Okay, so be the change you want to see in the world. And I know if you haven't heard that term, that was coined by Mahatma Gandhi, which is a favorite of many, definitely a favorite of mine. I like to say that I want to be the mirror of how I want someone to communicate with me. So in order to do that, I have to be able to monitor how I'm communicating to other people. So I want you to take a moment right now and to really think, do some internal thinking about how you show up in the world, in your space. right? So when I say the change you want to see in the world, I mean in the space that you're occupying, in the environments that you're occupying, at school, at home, at work, on the job, in your professional communities, in your personal communities. What are you communicating? Is it empathy? Is it compassion? Um, are you listening? Because that is key today, is to listen, listen, listen. So are we listening and not just talking? Are we mindful of others' opinions, right? Are we, when we're in discussions, especially now, there seems to be lots of debate, lots of rhetoric around lots of things, racial injustice, COVID-19, women's issues, so forth and so on. And when that shows up in the workplace, even virtually, how are you communicating your meaning, your intentional meaning in that space? So absolutely. So Melissa says most of us listen to respond rather than to comprehend what was said, right? So we all do it. You, I, Melissa, everyone, we do it. And we have to be conscious of it in order to practice, because practice makes perfect in every situation. So we talk about practicing our communication. You're never too old to practice effective communication and what works for you. And I believe that in order to see a change, just in your environment, not just the world, because I like to change the world. I want to be world changing, impactful all the time. But in your environment, if you want to see a change, you have to mimic the same thoughts and actions that you expect from others. And the three vital ones that I often talk about is patience, understanding, and most of all, respect. We're trying to get to a point, and I tell this to my students, clients, when I do trainings with companies, when we talk about what is the purpose of having effective communication, it's not always to agree. You're not always going to agree with someone's point. But if we truly take the term agree to disagree, and many of you say this term, right? Agree to disagree. I agree to disagree. I agree to disagree. But what does that actually mean? For me, it's understanding without judgment, right? So you can actually understand a point that you absolutely, unequivocally disagree with, but you can understand it without judgment. You don't have to accept it. So that is what really effective communicators do. You take in the information, you have this listening piece, right? And then you go into it with an understanding that maybe I don't accept this into my space or accept this into my life or how I move around in life and environments, but I can take a moment to understand what this does is this allows a space for you to be able to have dialogue, right? Shelley said that it makes sense, but it's hard to do without emotion. It is. That's why there's a pause, right? You only have control of you. One thing I want to give, here's a recommendation for everyone. Here's a good tactic. Say in your mind, no matter what I say, I'm not in this conversation to change this other person. I am just in the conversation, discussions, to deliver information. I have felt disagree to disagree. I can go in conversations and absolutely disagree with what this person is saying. But I find that when I'm looking at it from many vantage points, that I can find a common place where I can understand this. I just don't accept it. Okay, Charlene, so what I want you to do is when you go into this conversation, right? I can repeat that. When you go into the conversation, I want you to think about this internally in seconds, right? I cannot change. I am not going into this conversation to change this person's view. I am going into this conversation to provide information, because we as individuals only have the control to change. Usually when the emotions bunch up and they come in, especially when we're talking about things that we absolutely disagree with, we want to change that person. We want to automatically give proof to disprove the person's point, right? You're welcome, Charlene, to disprove the person's point, when in actuality, you're providing information so that they can go through their own internal filter, because we often forget that what connects us is culture. Experience connects us. So if they have no reference of that experience, they probably, right, in the moment, won't be able to understand it. That is, they're in agreement with it. So remember, agreeing to disagreeing is going to mean to you understanding without judgment. Okay, so we talk about times of crisis. Like you said, you talked about emotion. What happens? Anxiety comes in, right? You get all balled up, right? Uncertainty. We're in a time where there's a lot of anxiety going on, a lot of uncertainty. So we got a lot of emotions going on, right? Our emotions are very heightened. We have increased stress. So we're quick to be reactive, right? What that does is that not only heightens our emotions, but that also puts our personal bias on notice, because when you're anxious, right, you're impulsive. So you move at a moment's notice without thinking. And so your experiences, our personal bias comes into play. So whatever we think a thing is, we don't double check it. We go right into defending it within the discussion in the moment, because we're under a lot of undue stress, anxiety, uncertainty, and heightened emotions. That's okay though, because we all have bias. And what I mean by bias, so we can all be on the same page, is influence thoughts and actions in favor of or against one thing, person, group compared to another. So it's just influential thoughts that we think based on what we've experienced, what we know, right? And to be honest, so, I tell my students this. Oh, good, Shelly, thank you. What I tell my students and tell my clients when I train is that what happens with our bias is that it's not a bad thing. We want to, my first question I ask is, who has a bias? No one wants to answer that question. No one wants to say yes. We all have bias because we only have this vantage point. We only get to see life through our own eyes and experiences. And yes, we can watch other people's experiences, but it's not ours. So sometimes it won't resonate and communicate the same way. So we get angry when we think something is outright wrong that someone else doesn't seem to see as wrong, because we experience it, or we've experienced it, or it resonates with us differently. Patience and understanding and empathy. I usually use tolerance, but tolerance may be, language influences perception, so tolerance may fall a little differently. So what I mean is empathy towards somebody else's experience or lack of experience. So we all have a bias that we experience. And they can originate from a couple of things. Societal norms, right? I tell this story all the time to our students. When you walk in the door and someone doesn't hold the door for you, you automatically think that they walk in the door before you, they don't hold the door kind of closes, you automatically get upset. At least many of my students and many of my clients, they get upset with this, right? They go, they should have opened the door for me. They're rude, right? When in actuality, they may not have seen you, that may not be their thing. So, but we get into these societal norms that we think that are embedded in our genealogy somehow, right? In our genetics. We think that opening the door somehow kind of communicates something. And it does, because it is a societal norm, but that doesn't always mean what we think it means. It could mean different things. So the bias comes in to say, not open the door, rude. That's one example. Stereotypes, big thing that's going on. Stereotypes have been around for forever, right? where you have a generalization of one group or another. And there are tons of stereotypes out there, no matter, I don't care, age, color, economic status, there are tons of stereotypes. Comedians use their material based on stereotypes, right? So these biases, even though we hear them and we know that, oh, this is a generalization of a group, in some ways, what happens is it creates a bias for us. And again, personal experience, right? If you have experienced it, it is what you say it is. If you believe it to be, that's the thing. A good tip when having a conversation with someone and you're talking about your experience, begin with per my experience, or this is my experience. Because if you start to generalize it, it turns into a stereotype. But no one can refute your own experience. So when having discussions, try using the term, start with the preface. In my experience, this is my experience, because no one can refute the experience that you have. Here are the dangers with bias, though. Well, I said that, bias, we don't want to shun from saying you don't have any bias. You do, because again, we see from one lens, one vantage point. But here are the dangers of bias, especially within a time of crisis. And I love this meme. It's everything that I find agrees with what I think. Reminds me of how right I am, right? So usually when that happens, it's called confirmation bias. And what that means is that we look for information to support our point of being right, because we want to be right? Many times, if you just look at research and look at some of research, because you're going to have a lot of information that refutes, that supports. So as long as you're doing kind of a balanced check about, let me make sure what I'm talking about comes from my perspective, and you build a perspective that's around a balance, you can kind of diminish your bias a bit, because then you have information from a few vantage points. So be careful with confirmation bias. It can promote closed thinking. You think one way, this one linear way. You don't open your mind up to certain things. So you want to also be careful with having that. Those are the dangers of bias. And again, it can incite poor communication. So we're impulsive, we're right on it. Maybe our voices are yelling. I'm very expressive, and so I have to be careful sometimes, especially when we talk about use of hands, or if I'm right in someone's face, or even digitally, it can come off a little bit assertive or aggressive. So, like I said, bias is common. It happens to all of us, but the important part is how we choose it, how we choose to manage it is way more important than us having it. So as long as you're aware that you have a bias or many biases, then what you can do is be able to choose how to manage that. It's important because we want to explore varying experiences. It gives you that opportunity, like when you're able to kind of unmask and then manage your bias, you're able to have this kind of well-rounded view where you can be more understanding, right? Not accepting, but more understanding, less judgmental. It creates a space for dialogue. People find that, okay, well, they understand me, even though she doesn't agree. She understands me, so here, let's have a conversation. And it enables you to kind of maneuver through building better communication skills. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to do a small exercise to help you unmask this bias, right? So that you can, and usually this is kind of a longer period of time, but I want you to think about this in this short time. You can write it down, and you will get these slides so you can do the exercise by yourself. So what I want you guys to do is, who are you and what does that mean? I want you to do this exercise. So on a piece of paper or in your head, I want you to jot down your nationality, your race, your ethnicity, and your culture. Now, some of these are multiple. In fact, all of them could be multiple. Okay. Think about what nationality, the term nationality means to you, race means to you, ethnicity means to you, culture means to you. And I'll give you guys like 30 seconds to do it. Thank you, Nicole. I'm going to give you a bias test right now, really quickly, to unmask it. Okay, nationality, race, ethnicity, culture. What does that mean to you? It's not even really a test, right? It's more of how you think about these terms. As I said, language influences perception. So oftentimes when we think about these terms, we think of them as worldview, that everybody knows what nationality is. Everybody has a meaning for race. Everyone has the same meaning for ethnicity, and everyone has the same meaning for culture. When in actuality, even within your own circles, there are different definitions. Okay, right. So here's some definitions, some technical definitions that I got in different places, dictionary.com and a few other places about nationality, race, ethnicity, and culture. So nationality being a part of a nation, whether by birth or naturalization. So your nation of origin. A definition of race, which is always interesting to me. It's always interesting to me, depending on what place you gather your information for this. And I just did dictionary.com, something very general, something society kind of accepts a societal norm, right? Race was defined as a group of persons related by common descent or physical attributes. Okay, that's one. Ethnicity then became a group that has common national or cultural traditions, which I just substitute the word your heritage, okay? Culture was the customs, attitudes, and behavior characteristics of your particular group. And I summed that up to experience, right? So Melissa said cultures and subcultures. Culture, all of it, right? Culture is the culture. So you can put your subcultures too. You can, what I determine as a subculture, you may not determine as a subculture. So think about what you listed. Let's think about what you listed and what you thought was nationality, race, ethnicity, and culture based on your own definition, right? Of your experience that you've gone through, your bias that you know, right? And then think about these definitions. Would you change any of your answers based on the definitions? Would anybody change it? Or did it make you pause and think, maybe I should change this? No changes. Good deal. No changes. Okay. Anybody with changes? Okay. If you have changes, you can pause it up there. All right. So what happens is I want you to think about, what do these terms mean to you? Do you believe that you have generalizations about these terms? Does having a working definition change any of your answers? I answered that to you. It is interesting about the definition, Shelley, because the definitions are different for different people. So what I want you to do is take this example, take this test, if you will, and begin to have conversations with your circle, your profession, your circles in your profession, your people in your circles of professions. Professional conversations about their meaning of race, ethnicity, culture, and nationality, okay? Because there's one thing that always comes up, I ask this question all the time, can a Caucasian person be African American? The answer sometimes goes no, but they can, right? because there are Caucasian Africans who are American, who have dual nationalities. So sometimes these terms, I gave you an example of how there could be a understanding of what African American is from a societal norm, when in reality, love it. Thank you, Jennifer. Love it for sharing that. White Hispanic, for sharing that. There could be different definitions. If you said African American from a societal norm in America, that does not look like a white person. So I want you to do this example with a trusted circle where you're going to have understanding, patience, and see if you can see any of your bias and their bias as you're discussing these terms and what these definitions mean. Because meanings can be very fluid and interchangeable, it is good to know where what you understand different words have, what different meanings have for different words for different people. And that's the first piece in having effective communication. Generalizations about our own self-identity usually influences our behavior subconsciously and consciously. So what we think about ourselves and all of these things that we relate to our nationality, our culture, our ethnicity will definitely have effect on how we actually behave and communicate to other people. And as I keep reminding you guys, language influences perception. Okay, language influences perception. So one person's cup is another person's glass, is another person's mug. So in order to understand, to have complete understanding, it is best to understand the definition of what someone means by cup, what someone means by mug, and what someone means by glass, so that you're able to have a good leg and good communication, an open dialogue with someone. Okay, so oftentimes we have obstructed views, sorry, and we have this internal mapping on how we communicate to people. So a couple of things with that. Common sense isn't that common. Again, we have different vantage points and have different experiences. Just because we may live in the same neighborhood, our experience may not be the same experience. Just because we may be women, may be the same color, sometimes the experience. So give a little leeway for that term. I know it isn't the same. So many of us use it. It's common sense. It's usually probably more of a standard that happens or societal norm. Shared similarities don't always equate shared experiences, right? And beware of the everyone should know that syndrome, okay? Everyone won't know that. Be careful with everyone would know that. Question all the time. Ask where someone is in the definition of questions. I always ask people, what is your meaning of this? So that I can have a more effective conversation with them and we can have more communication that is more of agreeing to either agree or agree to disagree in a way that has no emotion connected with it. Okay, so remember that when unmasking your own bias, the key to unlocking it is to assess yourself so that you're able to effectively communicate to one another, to others. So getting to know yourself, know your bias, that will help you manage it. All right, so I want to give you a few tips before I go on how to manage your bias, and I want your actions to mimic your thinking. So sometimes the change in mindset will help us deliver better actions. So I want you to be aware, first thing, awareness. Be aware and understand your bias. It is important that you understand where you have blind spots when communicating. You want to do things like display empathy and patience for others. So place yourselves in others' shoes, okay? That is so difficult to do, especially when you absolutely disagree with their points, right? Place yourself in others' shoes. Think about their feel, and even when you're having a conversation, it's easy to do because you can ask questions. You can dig in to try to see where you place your empathy. Like, how can I understand this information? And it's way more difficult to do in general public, but practice one piece at a time, right? We have to be patient with each other. These are critical times. They're vital. They're difficult. Like I said, they're uncertain. We have a lot of anxiety. We have a lot of personal things going on and a lot of societal things going on all at once. So using empathy and patience is one of the first tips that I would recommend. Secondly, we have to shift our mindset. The power of reframing: when you change the way you think, you change the way you feel. So as I said, sometimes it's easy to interpret empathy as thinking about what you would do in a situation, opposed to the circumstances and experience that influence that person's opinion. Absolutely, I'm glad you brought that up. So empathy is more of an understanding of where that person is, not how you would deal with it, because then that goes back to your bias, right? Because we only have this one vantage point, we have no idea what's going on with that person. But you want to give some type of allowance, a little allowance, not necessarily for you to be disrespected. I don't mean that, but in a way where it will provide better communication with with people. And it's more about how you're communicating with people on the day-to-day, professionally and personally. Okay, and so to do that, you got to shift your mindset, reframe it, change the way you think, change the way you feel. If I use the example of the door closing in my face, I'm going to take the road as they didn't see me. Because see, it's not necessary for me to open the door. In fact, it's not a fight that I choose to fight, but I'm not going to have an attitude about it, because guess what? They're gone away doing their own business, and you're still upset about some infraction that they had no idea possibly that was done to you. But the only person that you can change the behavior is your behavior, and not to allow their behavior to influence yours. Okay, the tip is restrain your bias, right? So I gave you that example. Focus on the communication, not the difference. Oh, this is the hard one, challenging, but very important. So when you talk about agree to disagree, or challenges you may have with other people, especially when we talk about bias and we're having discussions or we're communicating with someone, focus more on how you're communicating your intentional meaning, right? That's happening here. I see this oftentimes with my clients when I talk to some of my senior execs, that what gets in the way is hierarchy. Well, this is my superior or my supervisor, and I can't really have this conversation. Where you want to focus on what you're trying to communicate, not the difference. Both of you are adults, right? There's communication and intentional meaning that needs to be conveyed. So focus on communication, not the difference. And Jennifer says, exactly, you can't control how others act, but you can control how you react. I like it, absolutely. Okay, 3, shift your actions. Action changes things. So if you're feeling the need to react, like Jennifer said, you can't control how others act, but you can control how you react. If someone else, if you're feeling that you're going to act, to behave in a different way, shift it. Shift your mind so you can shift that movement. Usually when you change your actions, the reaction is different. Yes, drop them in, drop them. We have like, oh, one more minute. Okay, thanks, Shelly. Shift your actions. Make sure you shift your actions. Okay. Don't let your thoughts influence your behavior. It's no worries. Don't let your thoughts influence your behavior. So when you shift your actions, or if you're thinking about a thought, sometimes I'm around, especially in the house. So I have a 26, 29-year-old, but a 26-year-old is here. He's in graduate school. And to get him to do things is different from when he was 16 to now 26. So I have to think, shifting my thoughts about how am I going to get him to wash this dish to influence not only my behavior, but his behavior. So if I change how I react to it, he will change or influence to do the things that I want him to do. And it's worked in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, it's worked because I didn't let my anger influence how I behaved in the situation. All right. Another tip is to connect globally. So part of the issue is that we don't have large experiences. So we have large experiences, but we're not going to have all the experiences. Look, we are limited in what experience we will have. So push it out there, make it more diverse, connect globally. This digital space helps you to connect globally, immerse yourself in more diverse relationships. And I just don't mean by color of skin or by geographics. I do mean economics or age or any other things that can come to mind that's gonna make you more diverse in the information that you absolutely absorb. The more information, the more you submerge yourself in these diverse relationships, the more information you will receive, the more you will be open to dialogue because you'll have more vantage points, more information, more eyes, so to speak. You'll add some eyes to your vantage point so that you can be more understanding and effectively communicate. All right, so I want to close by saying the goal is to facilitate change, right? You want to create positivity in your environment despite any bias. It is critical to do that. Take one of those tips, right? Change one piece at a time. It doesn't have to be this big change over explosive change in just a second. Just take one tip at a time and see the changes. Changes in your behavior will help, in your actions and your thinking will help you be effective communicators, especially personally and professionally. Here's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about before you go, what change that you're going to commit to your behavior or your thinking and share it in the comment field. We don't have much time, but I want you to share it in the comment field and commit to that. Look at that, commit to that, right? Look at that today. I want you to contact me, Shelly, put it up on Sharon Washington on all social media at CEO-P3. Tell me, follow up with me how that happened. Do it for a week. Let's see if any changes happen for a week. You follow under these tips, commit to change. Nice. Sherry said she's going to shift her actions. Contact me and give me some feedback. If it didn't change, if it did change, if some things changed in you, did it shift your mood? Did it shift your action? Because we want to be able to be the change that we want to see. And you have to start with your bias, understanding what that is so that you can be able to manage them to then effectively communicate personally and professionally. Thank you guys for having me. Shelly, I know we did like 4 minutes over, but thank you guys for having me. And if you want to connect with me, I'm all about building a connection. Please follow me on the social media pages. I will definitely reach out and connect.
Love it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I was scrolling through. I didn't see any additional questions in there. I know that you've got to run for another meeting. We appreciate your time today. And hey guys, again, you're going to get the slides. Please reach out. Sharon is definitely one of those intentional people. When you connect, she will intentionally want to really connect with you and want to know more, which I love, which was another attraction. So back over to you, Eric or Angela or whomever has the realm.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Wonderful presentation, and thank you, Shelly. yeah, actually at this point, I believe it's time for a break. So please go take some time, refuel in whatever way that is, and let's come back. The time will be 12:40 for our raffle. So please be back by 12:40. Thank you all. See you soon.
Hello, hello. Welcome back, everybody. I just always have that Welcome Back, Cotter song in my head when I've been saying that throughout the week. Cereal, yes, I love it. Okay, you got to share what cereal you've been eating. Inquiring mind needs to know. I'm gonna be honest with you. I heated up a breakfast sandwich, so that's what I'm eating, and some water, but no coffee. Completely coffeeed out. Better than my donut. Don't be judgy. Pimento cheese sandwich. Ooh, Special K with strawberries. Yummy. Chicken. Honestly, Shelly, I did go and get my stock on Dunkin' Donuts this morning. I ordered my usual chocolate covered with sprinkles. They gave me a pink covered with sprinkles. I don't do that, so I didn't eat it. You got nothing? Come on, girl. You need to eat something. Carrots? Ooh, yeah. Are they plain or are they cooked? Do you dip them in anything, Aga? Didn't eat. Jumped on emails instead. No, girl, you need to eat. You need to eat. Plain raw? Yeah. Sometimes that's the best. Ooh, chicken tikka masala. Oh. Too early for lunch. Oh, yeah. Some people like a late lunch. I know I do eat a late breakfast. Eating is not a good use of time unless it's a bagel or pizza from New Jersey. Hey. Now, can you get pizzas or bagels from New Jersey? Like, is there anywhere that you can go to and have it shipped to you or delivered? Pizza. I know. I want pizza. Yes. Okay, here's my pizza story. It's very quick. Every time I go to Connecticut, which by the way, I'm doing that right after the Sense, I always have to get pizza and a grinder from my favorite place. And I said grinder. I don't know about y'all, but it's a grinder. Your in-laws. Yeah, sub. Where do you order from, Dave? Don't leave us hanging. What's a grinder? It's a sub. It's a sub. Wedge. What's a wedge, Paula? Is that a riddle? A riddle that you didn't ask us last night? Yeah, in New England we call subs grinders. So I always get a grinder and pizza from my favorite shop from where I grew up. That's my thing. Grinder. Well, now we're getting a little north up into Boston. Grinder. Pete, what you eating? Something yummy with cheese on it?
You know I hate cheese, so I have not had the chance to have lunch yet. Work kind of blew up right around lunch hour, so I'm gonna have to figure something out.
See, I don't agree with that. Work should be placed on hold to eat. I feel like you might have said that to me a couple times.
Yeah, I probably did.
And not eat bird food. I get you. So what do you all think of our last day? Are you tearing up? I am a little bit. I don't show emotions though. Good. I'm glad to hear it. Oh, New York calls them a wedge. Okay. Someone else who probably hates cheese. You only eat I'm gonna mess this up. Del Vecchio's pizza across from ODU. It's the closest thing you can get to New York. There's no crying in HR. I wish I had a meme right now for that. Wish I had a meme for there's no crying in HR. I'm gonna take one of your pictures, Shelly, and I'm gonna put that on there. I'm gonna make a meme. I'm gonna turn you into a meme while you're tossing a box of tissues behind your back. Like there's no crying in HR. What am I talking about here? So we were just talking about how the conference is going. I'm glad everyone's been enjoying it. Great week. It's been a great week. I will totally do that. I just need the perfect moment for when you're not looking when I take that picture. We've had a lot of great attendance here. Sahara's queuing me for the raffle, but really quick before I do that, I've gotten a lot of comments and feedback from all of you, including other chapters who have joined and state council leaders saying, you guys are doing great. And I'm really glad to hear it. And as you know, we have a conference planning committee that has really pulled that together. And I know that we might be missing some of them today. But if you are here, conference committee planners, and you can turn your camera on very quick and just give a little bit of a wave so folks can hear you, provided they have their cameras on, active cameras as well. Just give a little wave so that they can see who are behind the scenes conference committee planners and our conference volunteers for the day too. Those of you who have been helping in the chat, helping with our activities, please give a little wave. These are the folks that have really turned this around in a very, very short amount of time. I literally just show up and turn my camera on, and then you get to listen to me jabber away every day. But these are the folks who are really making it happen. So when you say you, I know that you're referring to these guys and ladies and gents here. So big thank you to all of you. I didn't get to do that today to thank you all. And Sahara, who's been driving all the slides behind the scenes. And you know, like I said, like it's a lot of planning. It's a lot of planning that goes into this and a lot of logistics. So thank you for being our driver for the week. It can get, when you're going back from screen to screen, it can be a little much. So thank you for planning this and turning this around and letting me just kind of show up and babble away with all of my props. I was going to show another prop, but I feel like you're propped out and I have my cue to give a raffle. So we are going to go into our raffle. It's our last afternoon raffle of the conference. For this raffle, we are giving away one SHRM national membership. And what that means for those of you who are current SHRM members is this is going to be a renewal. So congratulations to you. We're going to take care of that. For those of you who are not a SHRM national member, this is going to be new. So congratulations to you. You've heard us talk about the resources that SHRM has, which is a plethora of resources for you to use. We use it day to day. In fact, there was one instance where legal counsel said, hey, Angela, whatever SHRM puts up on their website, you know, for verbiage, just take a look at that. It's like, okay, you know, we got you. So I'm happy to announce that our winner for this raffle, and if you're on there, which I think that you are, is Sherelle Clark. Are you still here today? And if you're not, okay, you were here a little earlier, but you're not now, and that's okay. We're gonna reach out to you. If you can hear me, I'm sending these words to you as we speak. So congratulations. We'll be reaching out to you. And as you know, at the close of our conference today, we are going to pull our larger raffle for the registration to HR Virginia 2021 State Conference, which is going to be in Norfolk next year. If you don't win registration for 2021, that's okay. We'll have an opportunity at the end of this year. If you are a PenSHRM designated member, we pulled another one at the end of this year with a little extra that goes with it, because we are an extra chapter and we'd like to do those things. So we'll be pulling that at the close of our conference today. Let me see, where are we? 12:49. So I think we're getting ready to move over to our next sponsor for today. And Dave, I saw your camera earlier. There you are. If you don't know Dave, then we need to get you connected to him ASAP, and we'll put his contact info and all that good stuff into the chat. But I'm going to turn it over to our sponsor, Town Benefits, and they're going to talk to you a little bit about their services. Dave?
Thank you. Hope everybody's having a great virtual conference. It's interesting. I'm actually more nervous presenting virtually than I am in person, which is just odd, because if I mess up, I could just disconnect, right? But it's also nice to not present and have a face mask getting sucked into my mouth and having glasses fog up at the same time, which I'm sure a lot of us have been through. So Town Benefits, as most of you know, is an affiliate of Town Bank. Town Bank is unique. The approach that Town Bank really brings to the market is to their goal to derive 50% of their revenue from their non-bank affiliates. What we're trying to accomplish is a one-stop shop for small, mid-market, and some large or large cap organizations as well. So what I really want to chat about with the brief time that I have today is the changing role of your broker. I think historically your broker would show up once or twice a year, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, chat about experience, how well the plan's performing, get ready for the renewal. Here's the bad news. Well, that has changed. Thanks to technology and tighter budgets, your broker really needs to become an extension of your benefit administration regime. They need to become part of your team. They need to understand your workflow. Not dissimilar to every payroll company in the world who's going to get you from gross to net every other week when you press the go button. What's important is the approach to service and also implementation when you first kick off with a new broker. So Town Benefits, what you're looking at right now, this is what we refer to as our wheel of services. It starts with benefits consulting, of course, and going to market and conducting a thorough market analysis. But the next step we take is very holistic. We ask a lot of open-ended questions regarding your workflow and where are the pain points. Let's talk about technology. Let's talk about delivery, open enrollment. Are your employees engaged? Are you trying to attract talent, retain talent? Are we more budget focused? Technology comes into play because it'll actually become more important, more than likely, in the coming months because of COVID and the fact that we're going to have to behave in a conservative manner. What does open enrollment look like? So your benefit broker really needs to have extensive knowledge relative to ben admin technology. Benefit broker should also be helping you with compliance solutions, SPD and wrap documents, 5500, that should be taken care of by your broker. Claims analytics, a lot of talk about that. As more and more of us go self-funded or move into an alternative funded universe, owning your own claims data becomes important because that's really how we can lay out an effective wellness program. So at Town, I think you can see around the circle, we're not just going to be talking to you about a market analysis and, hey, we're going to save you 4 or 5%. We really want to get into we really want to be able to understand your culture. And Sahara, if we can go to the next slide real quick. So this is our process continuum. Starts with understanding your organization, coming back around to understanding your culture, developing a strategy. Typically, we draw up a 2 to 5 year plan. Where are we today and where do we want to be tomorrow? None of us know today what we're going to need tomorrow. So the strategy is constantly being aligned. That falls under our assessment phase, which occurs throughout the year. How are we accomplishing the first 3 steps? We're in your office. We're meeting with you at least 3 days a week. We will continue to make recommendations. Our goal is to identify measurable objectives throughout the course of the year to help you develop a stronger or better action plan. And once we settle into a good rhythm, it's all about implementation and monitoring. Implementation never stops because we're going to continue to have to make changes as time goes on. So just to wrap up real quick, our approach at Town, which I believe is significantly different than the market, it's not about grabbing market share. It's about partnering with the right organization and servicing and becoming an extension of that organization's benefit administration regime so that you, HR professionals, can focus on those next level to-dos. I think PenSHRM's great. I think, as some of you know, I'm a former board member, very busy, so I can't be as active as I have been, and appreciate the opportunity to be a sponsor, support PenSHRM, and also brag about our wonderful organization.
All right. Thank you, Dave. That is applause that I know is, deafening to you right now because it's virtual. So thank you for sponsoring. And yes, you may recognize Dave as a former board member. He was with us for college relations, and it does get busy. does get busy at town and in personal lives too. And thank you for coming and sponsoring us today. I'm going to kick it over to Aga to introduce our last but not least speaker of the day. I just have a final prop because you're not propped out enough. I want to show you this magazine that Shelly also has. Aga's got her copy. Shelly does push these out. I was hoping to get a physical copy, but I'm going to have to deal with the virtual version that she just put out. But I'm going to kick it over to you now, Aga, to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Angela, and good afternoon. I'm honored to introduce you Shelly Smith. Shelly is a best-selling author, consultant, and founder and CEO of Premier Report consulting firm. Her experience over the past 35 plus years has earned her a reputation as the creator of the culture inquiry in businesses all along the East Coast and also beyond the East Coast. Her success stems from the strength of her personal approach, asking tough questions to hone in on the pain points and areas of growth opportunity. The most recent of her 5 published books, titled How to Avoid Culture Big Fat Failures, has rattled and disrupted corporate America in a highly effective manner. And her culture approach includes 4 phases: inquiry, analysis, creation, and curation. Numerous C-suite executives have tapped Shelly for her sharp insights and professional recommendations to shape the culture they've envisioned to increase the profitability and decrease employee turnover and retain top talent. Shelly has been serving on the board of PenSHRM for several years as programs and sponsors chair and currently as a Chamber of Commerce liaison. The magazine that both of us have, and I think many more of us have enjoyed to read, has been great. There is a new digital edition available with amazing articles about self-awareness, resilience, motivating your people. So I encourage you to take a look at that when you have a chance. Shelly was the first person that I met when I arrived here and joined PenSHRM, and she has always been very welcoming, supportive, and always willing to share her expertise. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Shelly Smith.
Thank you so much. That was a warm welcome. I remember first meeting you as well. It was really cool. And now to be on the board with you is amazing. So thank you so much. I am super thrilled to be the wrap up today and kind of take you guys through. And I probably will get animated. For those of you who know me, I'm very animated. So to kind of take you through very intentionally how to define what resiliency is inside of your culture, how to then build it, and then how to market it. So I'm going to take you through that in a few different ways, and I'm going to give you a wrap of how to attract the people that you're looking for to become even more resilient. But first, a wrap up, and we make sure the slides are changing, and they didn't. There we go. All right. So a wrap up for the week. For those of you who have to go back and do hashtag replay, just some reminders of who was up to bat this week, and then bringing that in full speed into what does this have to do with a culture of resiliency. We had Johnny Taylor, who blew our minds when we first came in to open up, and he inspired us, and he talked about the key initiatives. And of course, who can forget our president and her amazing message to really set off the tone of the conference to begin with. And then Elizabeth came in, and I apologize, I had submitted this before. She was going to talk about HR analytics, but she really got us jazzed up about the agility side and how to bring that into play. And of course, Jennifer with her business acumen, and then Curtis and organizational growth, Susan with how to manage the sales force and business growth. And then we had Beth, who took a deeper dive into agility and Scrum. And then John Hawley, who came across and blew our minds away very quickly with some design thinking activities. And then, of course, our beloved Mary, who told us how to better manage up with one another in sideways and 360s. Mac today with his drawing. And then John and Johnny again with how they talked about doing virtual meetings in teams. And of course, Rob to talk about performance, and then Sharon and communications. All of these things are things that are going to, if you haven't sort of pulled it together, all of those aspects are how you build resiliency. And so first in the chat, I would love to know, how is it that you guys define resiliency? Like, what are some quick popping words that come in when you think about resiliency? And I forgot to turn on my timer while you're doing that. What do we got? How do you guys describe resiliency? You got nothing? There we go. All right, awesome. Yes, yes. Ability to adapt, determined to overcome, reframing, perseverance, bouncing back. Absolutely. The ability to change and to manage. So I've got a couple of different things to, again, to kind of reset the mind, because all that stuff is absolutely on point. So defining the resiliency and defining it, I found a few pictures that I hope kind of resonate with you. And, you know, this is obviously a picture of a flower or a weed that's kind of coming up through the cracks and shouldn't be growing there, right? So the capacity to overcome, the capacity to change, the capacity to get through not one crisis, but two crises, to get through the changing every single day environment, we have to have resiliency. And so it begs the question of, where do we even begin, and how do we begin to evolve into the future of work that we've been talking about for our entire week? And like Angela said, is also inside of, oh, I thought I had my HR magazine, inside of everything that is, I've got it right here, the latest and greatest HR magazine that we all got. How do we do that? So I want to give you a few tips in order to start to help you define it. And I want to first draw you to some stats to give you some urgency. You know, 88%, you can see the stats here. I'm not going to read all of these, but 88% of the respondents in a recent HBR Fortune 500 companies talked about how much they were ready for the disruption and how they were able to really decide whether they thought they were resilient or not, and were they going to be able to sustain. And the last thing that I want to point out here is only 12% believed that they did and were able to promote resiliency, and then less than half of them actually said that they were even confident. And I think that on many levels, and let me just ask in the poll, when you think about not your personal, but when you think about the team that you're in, the organization that you're in, let's give it a rating. Let's give it where we think an A, B, C, D, F of how resilient you think your company is right now today. And so let it fly. No judgment. No judgment. Let's see. We've got a D plus. What else we got? A D, a C. Ooh, we've got one. I got to scroll back to see who that was. We got lots of A's and B's. Awesome. So we've got the span. But the thing is, do you guys think that we can always up our game of resiliency? Do you think it's possible, or do you think you're resilient or you're not? Think you can up it? Yes, no, absolutely, yes, absolutely. Absolutely you can. So let me give you some things that are going to begin to help you define it and begin to build it. And so here I really want to lean into the emotional resiliency. And then I'm going to take you into how do you frame that with your team, and what are the action items that you really need to do. Is, first of all, we've got to learn from our past failures, right? An organization always is going to have failures, but shifting our mindset into the opportunity piece and being able to adapt to really adverse type of changes, you know, these are things that help us transition more successfully when we take a step back and say, what worked well, what didn't go well, specifically what went wrong. One of the things that for those of you who either work with people who have been in the military or you yourself were in military in any of the branches, one of the things after missions is you would go back and do a recon and a recap of it. It's something that even for our board members after the chapter, Angela already has us teed up to go, hey guys, what worked, what didn't. So learn from your past failures. And I like to use the word opportunity, but I intentionally chose failure today because when we have in our mind that something was a failure, we've got to immediately unpack that to figure out how do we bounce back. What is it that we need to do differently, and ask ourselves those tough questions sometimes. The next step is look at the big picture. We've got to reframe it. I don't want you to always think about everything in a win-lose situation from a zero-sum perspective terms, but I want you to think about it for the long term. So if something is a fail now, something's an opportunity now, from a resiliency and a bounce back, how do we begin to disarm that myth? How do we begin to shift that perspective? And I'm going to go back to the litany of speakers we've had this week. They've given you a ton of ideas, thoughts, tips, perspectives in order to begin those shifts. What are you going to do with the nuggets that you've gotten this week? Is this going to be another conference that you're like, oh, that was really great, but then you didn't go back and do anything with all the notes you took? Or are you going to look back and apply the failures to the tips that you've got? Look at the big picture of the objectives of what does success look like inside of your team in order to shift and bring people in together. Whether it's yourself and one other team member, whether it's your team plus another team, like Susan talked about, HR to sales, maybe it's IT to the operations side. What are you going to do differently to begin to build an emotional muscle? Inside of our emotional intelligence, in the 5 composites, we've got what's inside of our head from a confidence and what we believe, and then what begins to come and to articulate out of our mouth, and then the two-way communication that we have that forms our relationships, that ends up landing on how do we make decisions and what does that do to the stress level. So through those 5 composites of our emotional intelligence, which we can absolutely learn and build on, is what do we learn from the past, keeping it big picture, and then bringing people together with intentionality inside of that. So now let's talk about how do we actually build those continued muscles. And here I want to talk about the self-care, the continuous learning, and finding the meaning. And when I talk about self-care, I'm talking about you first. You have to love and be right inside of your head, your mind, and your soul first in order to become resilient and to show people how to show up with resiliency. I cannot stress that enough. This is things that you need to allow for your time and for your space. And then when you're able to do that your actions are aligning with what you're saying to your team. It's lunchtime. What did you guys have? Well, I didn't have anything. Well, you were just encouraging your team to take a break, but you yourself didn't take a break. That's what I mean. Those two need to be in sync with one another so you can come back and they can come back eager, fed, mentally and or physically, and motivated in order to succeed. So give yourself the time and the space, and make sure you're giving your employees the time and the space. That is beyond critical now in the changes that we're going through. Continuous learning. You've got to continually learn. The more experiences that you have, the more you're able to learn, listen, and lean in with absolute resiliency. You just heard Sharon talk about those experience pieces inside of that. The more I'm able to have experience sitting in as much as I can, sitting in other people's shoes inside of my team, inside of my organization, the more when I'm sharing an idea or a thought, it's not my opinion. I'm sharing it from an experience. I'm being authentic, going all the way back to Elizabeth talking about agile teams. Being authentic and transparent with your experiences builds trust. builds that foundation, that strong foundation. So the more that we're able to learn and shift our own perspectives through continuous learning, the better off we are. And then finding meaning inside of that. How do we find meaning inside of a large organization? It's really hard, but what I'm talking about, it's really talking about this from a shared purpose standpoint. Your mission, your vision, your values. What is it that you're doing on a daily basis in order to ensure that you are aligned with the values of yourself to your team and making that come alive? If you're talking about resiliency, what are you doing to bounce back when you get into a funk? How are you sharing that with your team? When we're talking about shifting a change or a mindset, when you're talking about, you know, hey team, we should spend 20% of our time on our strategies and our goals, and then 80% of our time of God knows the whirlwind, what happens. By a show of little hands or little notes in the chat, how many people have the whirlwind on the daily take over? Best laid plans go poof because of the phone calls and the emails and all the drama that happens, right? Daily. So if you and your team have said 20% of our time should be spent on strategy and 80% on the whirlwind, and we're intentional, and there's 20 members on your team, what have you done as a leader to go, you guys, let's block 1 hour a day at the same time of the day so we don't have emails and time scheduling impartation to come in. And we're all going to commit together that that is our 1 hour of focused strategic time. So what are you doing in order to find meaning, to have the shared purpose, to make sure that your personal development is in a continued learning space and that you're taking care of yourself? As we move on, get the next slide queued up here, is now we've got to create it. So we've talked about defining what it is, right? Beginning to build it out, and what is that going to take? So now I want to talk to you about actually creating and maintaining that culture that inspires resiliency. If I'm not in it to win it, if you've not created a buy-in and a win and you haven't gotten me to turn to the radio station WIIFM, see who knows it. Drop it in the line if somebody can type really quick. WIIFM is what's in it for me. Everybody always wants to know what's in it for me and creating that buy-in. So having that resiliency of being able to create, if I do this instead of that, if I react this way instead of that way, I'm doing it with intentions. I'm able to bounce back with more creative, innovative, agile responses and better decision making inside of the team's expectations. So starting to build more resilient teams, hiring the right people. You know, we have space right now where fortunately or unfortunately, really, it's unfortunately, a lot of people are looking at shifting their jobs. They're looking at shifting their jobs because they've been let go, or furlough is going longer than they wanted to, or they have started to check out, and maybe some of you are on here frustrated, you started to check out or you're burnt out, and so as soon as you can, you're going to jump ship. Those individuals during the interview process, I want you to lean into asking questions about what did they do inside of their team during the pandemic and the crisis. And Mac talked about this a little bit. How did they face the challenge? What did they do to overcome the challenges? What did they do to continue to lead from the front? What did they do to continue to train? Have them tell stories that give you a great idea and perspective of whether they are resilient or not. A few well-defined questions in the interview process will start to uncover and discover those really high-performing individuals who really stepped up during the crisis mode. So start building more resilient teams can actually be demonstrated from people from the outside. The ones that did step up during the crisis that are on your team right now, and if that's you right now, write down the things that you've done differently. How have you stepped up? Why have you stepped up? How do you make a decision? What is it that calls you to action to communicate, to make a phone call versus an email versus a video? How have you leaned in and built a deeper trust? Those are all things that are making you more resilient, and maybe you just consciously didn't know it, but those are attributes that you're looking for and that you want to possess yourself. Reducing the hierarchy, the second piece inside of your organization. Elizabeth talked about this a little bit, and becoming more agile, and you certainly can't do it overnight. But here's what I'm looking for is maybe reassigning some functions that maybe you've discovered during, again, this virtual work time in this pandemic, of things that you can do, which kind of leads to the next step too, of eliminating redundancy. So what are some things that you can do that can shift or reassign that are maybe more aligned to a person's behavior, or maybe somebody has stepped up and taken over something? Those are things that add positive layers to trust, communication, and resiliency inside of your culture. And then eliminating redundancy. There is nothing more frustrating and nothing that makes us burn out quicker than to feel like we're doing things for either no reason. You assigned them, you took them back, the timeline shifted, too many competing priorities are coming along, yet another project is coming along, an old project is supposed to come to end, that we've missed another deadline. These are things that frustrate from an overload that you need to be able to process, eliminate. So when you're taking that hour of strategy time that I mentioned as a tip, those are things that you want to go through that help you get to the greater goal in order to help you eliminate the redundancy. As we continue to move through that, it's defining what the work processes are and the expectations are. And I cannot stress enough, if you are not clear on what success looks like, feels like, sounds like, what it is that you believe that aligns to the greater mission, vision, values, hopefully your culture philosophies, hopefully your culture workbook, playbook pages. If you don't know that, how do you expect your team to know that? And I'm talking about breaking down every single action word. If collaboration is a part of the essence of the resiliency of your team, how do I become and how do I show up as a resilient, collaborative team member? I need more than words. I need more than words on the wall and in the handbook. I need pictures, I need videos, I need stories. I need something that I can grab a hold of as a team member to go, that's what right looks like. That's what it feels like. That's what it sounds like. I often give the metaphor here when they talk about defining the action words to make this culture of resiliency come alive. It's like putting the guardrails up when you're bowling, right? Putting those up. It's like when you first buy a new car and all of a sudden you didn't see that car before, but now you see it every single day. It's that ability to recognize it in a second of what right looks like, just as much as all your other team members, of what does a collaborative, resilient team do. So creating and maintaining is first defining what the success looks like, feels like. What is that end game? What is that shared purpose? Who is it that you're looking for? What is it that you're learning from the past? How are you bringing that forward? What is it that you're doing to pull the team inside of those conversations in a very deliberate, authentic, transparent way? And how are you documenting it? The documentation is your playbook pages. It's an ever-living document that helps you create everything that I've just talked about, that helps you sustain it. It helps you build muscle memory as a leader inside of your team in a completely different way. As we begin to go into a bit of a wrap up here, I want to transition out and talk about the last couple of slides about ways to attract top performers and to retain them. And so here it's a reiteration of appealing to their values, really calling out what the values are. You know, we value integrity isn't enough. Integrity inside of your business, you've got to, again, define it. What does that look like? Integrity inside of relationships, what does that look like? What does that sound like? Again, these are all things that are interlayering, interlocking into building resiliency. It's building a stronger team that's able to maneuver. It's taking that, and they should have had this picture, it's taking that picture of the rubber band ball of all different sizes and really making it strong. It can bounce further, it can go longer, and you can peel it off, and it's really strong, and it comes in the different rubber band sizes. Hopefully you guys have a visual of what I'm talking about there. Being proud of how to reward and recognize inside of your organization. When somebody does something right that shows that resiliency, again, go back in time. As you think about the speakers this week, as you think about the things that I'm saying now, what can you do today or Monday to give some shout outs to your team? Now, give shout outs the way they're hardwired, whether it's private or whether it's public. But how are you rewarding and recognizing behaviors that says that's how we show up? That's how we behave at work when we're resilient. That's how we behave at work when we're collaborative. What are you doing inside of your organization to reward and recognize? How are you enlisting other employees to help you promote the workplace? When we talk about attracting employees, when's the last time you did a 30-second snippet for one of your resilient team members, maybe it's you, and you put that little video inside of an ad that you're hiring for an HR generalist, you're hiring for a payroll person, you're hiring for a business developer, and you're talking about coming into a culture of resiliency, and you want to define what that means to the applicants. Well, how about capture that from one of your team members who's living and breathing it? You're rewarding them, you're recognizing them, you're calling out what right looks like when you talk about resiliency, and you're giving the applicant a really good purview. And then maybe when they go to do the interview, they see that same person inside of the interview video panel or in person when those days come back, and they believe what it is that they've said. That's how you become resilient. That's how you sustain resiliency. And that's how your actions absolutely meet everything that you're saying. Cast a vision of opportunities. Here it's really about, having your eye on the candidate that's going to be the perfect match. One of the things that I used to do back in the day when I was in hotels, and I was looking for restaurant servers, when I would go out, whether it was a drive-through or whether it was a sit down, and whether it was to Walmart or grocery store, I was looking for people with service, right? I would intentionally leave my card with a little note on it. And when I would talk to them, I would talk to them about everything about service and why they needed to come work for me. So always have your eye out on amazing candidates that are out there as well. And then again, continue to define it. Build those playbook pages, define what it looks like, define it, build it, maintain it, and that gives you that almighty resiliency inside of that. And then lastly, and I want to see if there's any questions, is hiring specific resiliency skills for the future. I've talked about this in general, but I want to be real specific. Some of the things when I was doing my research of really hot topic specific skills are project and resource management. Companies are going to always need humans that are able to oversee projects and protect resources with especially wasteful practices. So we talk about automation and artificial intelligence. We still need the human element, but it'd be great to have those skill sets that go inside of that. Even if the actual work itself ends up being done by the machine or the robot, we still need somebody to project manage that. So looking for project and resource management experts is a great way to continue to be resilient, because they're able to bring new things in, and that skill set helps you get to the end goal, that strategy, that objective, that end of what success looks like, better, quicker, faster, and more intentional. Adaptation and agility. My gosh, all week we've been talking about agility. The future of work is absolutely being more agile and intentionally being more agile. I can't wake up and go, I'm going to be more agile today. Our team's going to be agile today. It don't work like that. So we have to be very intentional about these little steps and then add to them, add to them, add to them. So adaptability and agility. Again, when you're interviewing people, ask those questions. Listen for the specifics that they're giving to you about adapting about being agile inside of wherever they are now that they're coming to you, and seek those people out very intentionally. Learning and development, asking people what they've done along the way. Over the last 3 to 4 months, there's been so much time. I know we've been working longer. I hear you. I feel you. I hear you. The learning and the development opportunities, though, if you haven't grabbed onto those, from being able to listen to podcasts and all the ebooks and the registration of all the virtual training, if you talk to a candidate or a team member that hasn't done anything to up their game from a learning and development in the last 3 to 4 months, do you really think they're going to bring that to the table for you? No, they're not. If they haven't done it already, they're not going to do it. So look for those skill sets. Effective communication and creativity. And here it's the people who are leaning into the skills of Scrum, leaning into the skills of really design thinking, and what is it that they're going to bring to the table? How have they effectively communicated to their teams now? Have they used multiple formats? Did they bring additional ideas to the team? Those are specific skill sets that we can look for with intentionality that's absolutely going to build resiliency inside of your team and your workforce. So just a little bit of a final close, and then I'm going to wrap with the offer that I gave yesterday again. It's, resiliency, you have to think about, I have the long road picture here of how you're able to transform, but a resilient person, a resilient team is somebody who sees that mountain, they see it, they see the top of that mountain, and they're not thinking about how do I get up there. They're thinking and they're excited about what's on the other side. What's on the other side? Getting there is easy, is what they're thinking. The more resilient we are, we're challenged by what's on the other side, right? We've got to look on the other side. I just saw something pop up here from Rob. Let's see. I came in late to the decisions or growth mindset. Absolutely, the growth mindset. I forgot about that. The growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. I absolutely love that. So if you ever feel stagnant, ask yourself if we're there yet. Whether it is your health, whether it is your emotional intelligence you're trying to up, whether it is, am I a daffodil that's trying to grow inside of a cracked cement? Am I there yet? It starts with you individually. If any of you have ever listened to any of my podcasts or videos, I often end with culture matters. It starts with people. It's people every day, but it starts with us every day. So where are you inside of your mindset? How would you give yourself a resiliency rating? How are you showing up on the daily? What are you going to do with all of this amazing information we got this week that's going to add to your toolkit, your resiliency? It's going to add to it. It's going to help you live and to show up every single day. And so with that, just a reminder that your culture, whether you've got a culture of trust you're trying to build, a culture of resiliency you're trying to build, a culture of collaboration, I don't care what type of culture you're trying to build. If you have not defined it, if you are not building it, if you're not doing things to maintain it, it's going to fall flat. You've got to clearly define it. You've got to understand where you're going, because if not, you can't take anybody there with you. And if you've realized during the pandemic that your values don't line up with that of your company, I want you to know that's okay. That's okay. There's a company out there that has your values and you can go get aligned to. My daughter, I'm going to close with this. My daughter recently, I'm not going to name who she started working for. She interned with them last year and fell in love with their values. They have values of diversity, community, give back. She loved them, loved them, loved them, loved the internship. They had an amazing program. They hired her. She's graduated. She started there about 6 weeks ago. She thinks an eternity ago, about 6 weeks ago. She's in 12 weeks of additional training, which is amazing, right? I mean, who gets that? However, the manager that she's working with has become very disemboweled and disengaged with all of, let's just say, the civil unrest conversations. And her reality is she's no longer aligned with the company. My daughter's reality is that's exactly why I am aligned with this company, is because of everything that the CEO has done and is doing and I fell in love with. And again, I say to her every day when she comes home, very frustrated working with this individual, that it's okay. She's going to find her way. Remember why you're there. Don't let one person push you out. Your resiliency and your passion is what brought you in. And you know, when you're interviewing, to find more people like you, because they're going to love your organization and they're going to want to lean in. That's how you build resiliency, is through alignment. So I'm going to leave it with that. And we're right on time. Questions, comments? I didn't look at the chat box, like barely, so sorry. I don't hear you.
I'm sorry. I'm like, thanks, Shelly, that's good stuff. And I'm just thinking about how, you know, and I was thinking about when you were talking in terms of talent acquisition, and when we're hiring those specific candidates, and we always used to ask ourselves, especially when you have a lot of recs, are you hiring to fill seats, or are you hiring to fit the culture?
Yep.
You know, like that's a huge thing. And I think sometimes we might forget that as we're trying to fill seats because we need these people, but it's equally important to ensure that those that we are hiring also align with our values, our vision, our mission. You know, they need to fit the culture. Otherwise, why are we doing this?
It causes more stress in the end, and it sucks the life out of the rest of your team. So that hot moment of desperation costs you so much mental capacity in the end, and obviously the efficiency and the effectiveness. Yeah, right. I've done that in the past myself, but no more.
Yeah, and how hurtful is it to go through that process and then you end up canning a person after a week because they just didn't work out in so many ways, shape, or form. And I think about that ROI that you've spoken about so many other times. You know, when we're thinking about bringing people in and the ROI on the investment on them. So do we have any questions for Shelly? Let me go back up here. Up. Leading by example. And then how do you communicate this to, so I'm thinking about how I can start doing this. As you know, and some of you may have mentioned that we're going through some organizational changes too. And and I put in that my immediate team is an A+, triple plus, quadruple plus at resiliency, because we're trying to get there. We're trying to see how we align. And then when I talk to employees, it's how can I share this information with them? How can I guide them through this? You know, because you're going to have employees who are like, nope, no, yeah, not, you know, because they're moving from one type of culture to another. So how do you help guide them through, like, how can I really use this information and guide employees with that? And then, you know, coming back and doing those follow-ups with them. Like, how do I disseminate this?
I always use the word unpack it. So have the conversation in the small group to talk about maybe the last time you made a decision and what were those elements that aided or baited inside of making that decision, and unpack it and intentionally ask things around what were you thinking when you made that decision in a non-threatening way. Like, just literally, you know, like Sharon was saying, just to help me to understand, who did you talk to? What were your resources? You know, was it something that you did in the past? And be able to unpack it to go, well, I agree with you. I'm on the same page. I understand why you did. Or the next time, let's do X, Y, and Z. Unpack it. The bottom line is to unpack it. Talk about where are you guys at, specific to your question, where are you at in the shift? What do we like? What are we afraid of? Definitely attack the what are we afraid of? And why do we feel that way? Because you want to find out, is there something specific, or is it that we're holding on to the past in a way that's not helping us. And to Rob's point, it's not helping us from a growth, but it's keeping us fixed in the past. And we're not allowing to see a different perspective. So start small, start intentional. Think about the last decision or the last thing that you could tell by body language, like maybe on a call, that shook somebody, and go, well, let's talk about that. I definitely would not go back and go, hey guys, we're going to be more agile, or hey guys, we're going to be more resilient, because they're going to be like, what?
I don't understand. Let's talk about it. Arlene says communicate as often as possible by telling them what you can about the change. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's also okay to go, there's more to the story. I can't tell you right now, but when I can, I will. Again, that's that full transparency to not suggest that that's it, or because there's always, to your point, there's always something that we can say. There's always something that we can say that we can give. So I love that. Communicate with honesty. Absolutely.
All right. Any other comments or questions for Shelley? Yeah, today's times we hire culture. We need to hire culture add, not culture fit. Yep, remember why you do this. Yeah. All right. Well, if there are no further comments or questions for Shelley, we are going to wrap it up. And Shelley, thank you again for bringing it to a close and bringing everything that we've been learning throughout the week together. Like we've talked about, it's a lot of information packed into small sessions. So this is a great way to bring all of that information together to say, this is how we can use it for ourselves and for our organization. So thank you for joining us. This is your applause, virtual, out loud. So this is my cue for it's raffle time. So let me get out I promised you I didn't have any more props, but I can't help myself. We're gonna do a couple small raffles before we do our larger raffle. The first one that we are raffling off is a $50 Starbucks gift card, and that is going to Ruth Ann Reed. So Ruth Ann, if you are still on the line, congratulations. Our next raffle is for a Fitbit Inspire. I don't know if you can see that. And that is going to Grace Ann Wilhelm. So thank you, congratulations. And last but not least, and we don't have a snare drum to do this, so I'll lightly tap on my laptop, but we are now going to pull our winner for the HR Virginia 2021 State Conference registration. Again, that conference is going to be in April 2021 in Norfolk, the Hilton in Norfolk. And that winner is, and I hope you're still on here, is Medina Duchemin. I see you, you're on there. Congratulations. Congratulations. Congratulations to you all. We'll get in touch with you to get all of that contact information that we need to get you set up. So please be patient with us as we reach out and get everything that you've won to you. As a conference close, again, I thank you all for joining us throughout the week. I know that it's been a long week at work. It's been a long week in your personal lives. It's been a long week trying to juggle everything. And I really appreciate you showing up when you can for the sessions that you can join. I hope you all, oh my goodness, it's Josie Pearson. Everyone. I've been waiting a long time for this. I'm sorry, I'm gonna run this a little bit longer. Josie Pearson is, I'm blowing up my screen so I can clearly see you because I haven't seen your face in so long. Josie Pearson is a past president for PenSHRM. She is our current PenSHRM Foundation chair, and she is also our Eastern District Director for State Council. So she oversees Peninsula SHRM, Richmond SHRM, Hampton Roads SHRM, in addition to being the lead district director for State Council, because we have several district directors for the Commonwealth, as you can imagine. She was also co-conference chair for 2020 HR Virginia, which unfortunately was canceled due to national pandemic. And she also led a number, I won't go on and on, but she's very, very busy individual. And she certainly has given us a lot of fantastic guidance along our journey over the last several years. So Josie, I'm so glad. I told you one of these days, in fact, I'm going to take a picture of it right now because I can't even believe it's happening. I told you one of these days we'll get you on video. So please, Josie, thank you so much for all of your guidance. I'm so glad that you were able to hop on and join us today. So thank you for putting your video on. I'm sure you didn't realize I was going to keep it going this long, so everyone had a chance to be like, what was she talking about? Do you have anything that you want to share with us today before everyone hops off?
I just want to say a job well done. I hate that I didn't have an opportunity to sit in on all of the sessions, but the ones that I did participate in were totally awesome. I think you guys did a wonderful job. And from a state council level, I suspect there will be many chapter presidents reaching out to your team to find out how they too can do something similar. So way to set the standard. I appreciate all that you guys have done.
Great. Thank you, Josie. Thank you, Josie. That goes to all of you conference planners. She's gonna go. Thank you for turning your camera on. All right, everyone. It's been a week. Thank goodness it's Friday. It's also the weekend. If you've got to go to work, I hope it's a good rest of the day. If you're taking the rest of the day off, I hope you get to enjoy it. I've got sunshine on my end. I'm actually heading out to the airport now. So if you want to reach out to us about any of the speakers, if you missed their contact information, we'll get that to you. Just know that a conference survey is going to be coming out after the conference ends. You will get access to the presentations, any of the handouts. We also are working on the recorded sessions, but give us some grace on getting those put together. You can see we recorded the entire day. I'm sure you don't want recordings of me talking through the entire day, so we're going to extract those sessions out so you just get what you really want. So give us some time to get that together for you, and then we will email you how you can access those recordings. But in the meantime, we'll get the presentations, handouts, and credits to you within the next week. So yes, thank you for hanging out. Please feel free to reach out to any one of us if you've got questions about the chapter itself, if you're a member, if you're interested in volunteering, what those member perks look like. But otherwise, enjoy the rest of your Friday. We'll keep this going for another minute and then on to the weekend. Thank you all. Last prop. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a great weekend.